presents. Over the next hour and a half, we're going to be talking about how Bristol's innovators can help to fast forward our economic recovery. My name's Beatrice, and I've been working as a community manager here at Bristol24. I also run a small business called Aby Digital, where I support businesses across Bristol with digital marketing. I've been one of the co-organisers of the Bristol Innovators Group, who we're running this event with in partnership today. James is also part of that group.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, lovely to be here today. Thank you for the invite. So my name is James Snelgrove. I am an Innovation and Growth Specialist with Business West, also working with Innovate UK. And as Hannah said, I'm also one of the co-organisers of the Bristol Innovators Group. And just to say a little bit about that group, we're up to about 500 members now, and we run regular events, so monthly events, and we get involved in lots of different projects across the city. Recently we ran an Innovation and Careers Fair with the University of Bristol, and we've also got involved in some digital exclusion projects as well. So really the ethos of the group is around connect, learn, do, and to sort of progress the idea around innovation in the city and connect innovators up. So we work really closely with the University of Bristol and also UWE, and also developing partnerships with Bristol City Council and also the West of England Combined Authority. If you'd like to learn more about the group or get involved and become a member, you can find us on our LinkedIn group and also on social media.
Great. And now we're just going to hear a short video from Better Business members and other organisations across Bristol to hear what they think about innovation and the economy in Bristol.
Hi, it's Coast here from Coast Creative, Bristol Threads and the Bristol 500. Now, innovation, creativity and diversity are crucial to Bristol's future and also Bristol's economy. Whatever our future landscape looks like, these themes, these ideas, these mindsets are important to how we continually adapt and rise to the challenges ahead of us. What we're doing well right now as a city is that we've realised that we are not alone. We are continually realising that despite our differences, we all have common goals and that we all have a common compassion. We've seen threads of change and hope. We've seen how working together, innovating and being creative aren't just clever ideas that benefit a few. They are amazingly profound ways to serve the city and each other. So as we continue these broad kinds of conversations across sectors and across geography, as we work and sharpen each other, and as we seek to change on a whole variety of levels, I'd love us all to think about how we can encourage a broader and more diverse generation of leaders and change makers across ages and stages and across our city. And how can we release innovation, creativity and diversity across Bristol that's both from the city and for the city. Thanks.
Innovation is important to support Bristol's economy because it encourages young people and fresh thinkers to come into the city and create business and trade. Bristol is already supporting innovation through the tech industry, through the arts and culture scene, and the graffiti art scene is obviously a big one, alongside the range of production teams who are working within the festival industry. How can we support innovation further? The clear-cut way is to make sure that housing and rental is affordable for everyone, because it encourages young people to move into the city and to create new businesses and to innovate as they go.
Hi, I'm Dave Jarman. I'm a senior lecturer in entrepreneurship at the University of Bristol Centre for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Why is innovation important? Well, we've got lots of problems in the world and we want to do something about them. We want to improve and we want to do better. And it's existing ways of thinking that got us into most of these problems. So we need to innovate. We need to find new ways to address some of these issues. We need to create more opportunities. We need to solve problems. Innovation underpins all of that opportunity, all of those new ideas that can come forward. But how does Bristol do this well? Bristol, I think, is naturally quite innovative. It's creatively confident as a city. It's got an identity that sees itself, for the most part, as a creative. It's diverse, but yet also compact. So lots of different people, lots of different ideas, lots of different organisations can rub up against one another, and I think that creates lots of opportunities for serendipity to emerge. we've also got some great champions, both individuals and organisationally, who are doing some great work in this space. And obviously, one that I would point to would be the centre at the university. We're doing some really pioneering work in how we help young people bring forward their ideas, build that confidence, develop those skills, and try and solve the real problems in the world. So what can we do better? Well, the thing that troubles me the most is that sometimes innovation and entrepreneurship are a bit of a playground for privilege. That innovation and entrepreneurship is just easier to do if you've got the resources, you've got the time, you've got the confidence, you've got the connections. So we need to work much harder on opening that up. We need to give more people the opportunity. We need to give more people the confidence. We need to give more people the networks so that we can bring more ideas forward in a far more compelling and diverse and egalitarian way. So for me, it's about enabling access to all of that infrastructure and that support and that system that can support more people to be more innovative more often.
Hi, my name is Jessie and I'm from the Bristol Housing Festival, and innovation is so important, particularly in our city but across the UK and even the world. We're facing so many new challenges. In housing particularly, we're facing a housing crisis, a construction skills shortage and a climate emergency, and without innovation and making space to test and pilot new ideas, it's going to be impossible to find solutions to these challenges. We are so impressed with Bristol City Council. We think that Bristol is a city that says yes to big ideas, and so we're so grateful for that, particularly in the fact that they've been supportive, setting up the Bristol Housing Festival from the beginning. And what we do is pilot and test new technology, so we've been so grateful for their support. We're also conducting lots of research and evaluation to learn lessons from the pilots so that we can find scalable solutions for housing in the city, and they've been incredibly supportive of that. We've also recently partnered with Bristol One City and Bristol City Council to enter a Nesta Challenge, a Climate Smart Cities Challenge, where we're going to be focusing on how to find new technology and innovation to bring our city to net zero in the housing sector, potentially in the retrofit space as well as the new build space. And Bristol has been amazing at supporting us with that. So we're very excited for the next steps. And if there was one thing that Bristol could do to support innovation more, we think it would be to encourage nuanced conversations, to put out information that educates people on the different sides of debates. We see in housing a lot kind of competing agendas with affordability of housing, but also needing to solve the ecological emergency and save the trees, and better information and education just helps us to have really mature, nuanced conversations on these topics. But all in all, we think Bristol is a city that supports innovation really well, and we're so thankful to be in this space, in this city at this time.
Innovation is important for Bristol's economy because people here are passionate about driving positive changes locally and for the world. Quite simply, the way you make most impact is by implementing new ideas or doing things differently. Bristol's doing well to support innovation by maintaining a spirit of genuine collaboration, even as the ecosystem has grown. And we've got so much innovative talent in all kinds of areas, from biotechnology to the creative sector, data science to social enterprise. Bringing these people together is where the lasting impact is made. Bristol can do better to support innovation by enabling equitable access to opportunities for people from all backgrounds. Diverse organisations, large and small, naturally have more points of view and a broader perspective. And this leads to new ideas and different ways of working, and ultimately more success.
What can Bristol do better to support innovators? I think it's all about creating that environment that attracts talent and investment. Clearly there's lots that's working well, but there's always more that can be done. Things like office space, easy transport links, creating active networks that support those world-leading organisations in their niches, so they can share opportunities and challenges, and perhaps more sharing of some of the really great success stories that we already have.
Hello there, I'm Rob Sheffield from Blue Green Learning, and Bristol needs innovation, clearly, in order to recover from the pandemic, and it needs innovation to create new roles, new organisations, new industries. It also needs innovative thinking to agree on how to share the wealth from all of that more fairly across its citizens. And I think the broader context for innovation is that internationally it's moving quicker in some countries than others, but it's moving to a state of professionalisation, a bit like happened for quality management and project management in earlier decades. And in that context, we are doing lots well in Bristol. We have incubators and accelerators for startups and scale-ups. We have excellent learning services by the two main universities, award-winning programs around innovation, creativity and entrepreneurship. And we also have a lot of support from main governmental institutions from West of England Combined Authorities, Bristol City Council, Business West and others. What I think we don't do well is we don't think as a system. We don't think at the level of the city. We don't think systemically. So we need more systems thinking, we need more systems leadership, and I think we need to put the innovators at the centre and think of it from their perspective rather than the perspective of the organisations who currently provide the services.
Wow, what a great video. So many different interesting topics discussed in that video, and we're going to dive into some of those in more detail with our panel discussion this afternoon. So I just want to welcome our panellists. We have Aimee Skinner from as Innovation Manager from Future Space. Hello, Aimee. We have Dr. Aby Sankaran, Head of Innovation and Partnerships at Science Creates. Hi, Aby. We have Ben Price, Production Manager at Crack Magazine and Everything is Music. Hi, Ben. And we have Zahra Ash-Harper from Pervasive Media Studio. So hi, Zahra. Thank you very much for joining us. It's lovely to have you today. And over to Hannah with some questions.
Hi guys, thank you for joining us. First of all, I just wanted to kind of go around and hear a little bit about what each of your role is and why you are passionate about innovation. Zahra, shall we start with you?
Sure. I'm never one to shrink away. So I'm Zahra Ash-Harper. This is Colin in the background. You'll have to,
love Colin.
If he doesn't outrageous.
Hi, Colin.
My title is I'm a creative director for inclusion. I work independently. I no longer work for the Pervasive Media Studio, although I do a project alongside them as part of my freelance practice. I started my career in Bristol at the PM Studio as part of Watershed. I was the studio producer, and my job was essentially to bring together a community of creatives and technologists to really co-think together in an equitable space about what the future of innovation and technology and creativity was in the city. All of that obviously has shifted massively as the pandemic has set in. And it saw me, just by coincidence, just before the pandemic hit, quit my job as an act of resistance. Really, it was a powerful moment for me, thinking conversations and thinking about innovation. And it was a great opportunity to launch a practice that has social innovation at the heart of it. And I'm really excited to come and share some of my practice with you all today. Thanks.
Thanks, Zahra. Ben, can we hear from you next?
Yeah, of course. So my name's Ben Price. I work at Crack Magazine, which is a music publication which started in Bristol, but now we've got offices in London and Berlin as well. And it's been going for about 10 years. And my role there is I'm the production manager. I look after all of our kind of innovative projects we try and do, which, we haven't been doing innovative stuff for years, but we've definitely, over the last 4 or 5 years, have made some really good case studies around it. And we've got some new products which we've now launched, which is through that. My passion, I suppose, for innovation has really come through a music industry and wanting to try and do something different within it. And it felt, I was kind of got bored with where it was at. And we, as a magazine, have always strived to do new things. And that's kind of where we got to where we are, really.
Great, thanks, Ben. Aby.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's Aby Sankaran. I'm the Head of Innovation and Partnerships at Science Create, and I'm passionate about enabling scientific entrepreneurs to build game-changing deep tech and startup. And the idea really is to have a network where you work with local academic institutions, entrepreneurs, investors, and strategic service providers to support the ecosystem, because Bristol has a lot of these things, but they're not necessarily well connected. And part of my role is to make sure that that's there, so that essentially the companies can kind of get, have all their time spent on building some of the game-changing work that they're doing. I actually stumbled upon this role, but yeah, and it's very serendipitous that I'm here, really. But I'm an engineer by trade, and I moved to Bristol about 5 or 6 years ago, working for a company in the science park, Bristol Bath Science Park, and they were looking at installing tidal turbines. So that was the kind of idea I originally started up from. But this idea that there's much more inclusive women in STEM, engineering, science subjects isn't something that is really spoken about enough. And this idea that innovation is not subjected to any of these. You could come from any background, any color, any caste, any creed, and be just as innovative. And that's what really drove me to where I'm right now and the kind of work I'm doing. So I've worked with postgraduate researchers who are in this sector, and now I'm working increasingly with entrepreneurs who are in this area, helping them to kind of reach their maximum potential.
Fantastic, thanks Aby. And Aimee, do you want to tell us a bit about what you do at Future Space?
Yeah, so I guess my role's most similar to Aby's. So I'm Innovation Manager at Future Space. So we're co-located up at the University of the West of England, and we're co-located on site with the Bristol Robotics Lab and the Health Technology Hub as well. So at any one time, we've got about 50 startup and SME businesses working in the centre with more than 300 employees, supported across our kind of labs and workshops and offices. And my role in all of that is to provide quality business support programs. So I work with internal and external communities to help deliver and design interesting and relevant content for businesses, but also driving engagement between the resident companies and the university. And all of that is designed to help businesses to grow, to enable innovation and the creation of new products and new services, ultimately to kind of shape the world in which we live. And that's really what innovation is to me. It's about finding new and exciting ways to solve the challenges that we face locally and globally. And that can be from small incremental change all the way through to radical world-leading innovation. Both types are needed. And actually, James and Hannah, the three of us got to speak to an innovator called Elvin Turner last year, and he said that innovation is about having an argument with today, and that's really stuck with me because I think that embodies the passion that I have to challenge the way that things are done and enable people to do their best work so that we can change our future for the better. And that's what Future Space and other innovation centres and incubators and accelerators in the region and nationally and globally are all working towards, and I think that's how we're united as well.
Yeah, definitely, and thanks Aimee for reminding me of that great quote. I definitely agree. I'd like to hear a bit, there's some similarities but also a lot of differences in all the work that you do, but it's all kind of brought together around this theme of innovation. But how do you feel innovation is specifically important for our economy in Bristol? Ben, should we start with you this time?
I was thinking about this one, and I think it kind of came back to, I suppose, how we first found and got involved in more innovative projects in the city, and that was really through collaboration and working with people in these spaces and these incubators and these studios, and understanding what the difference between kind of research is, and then taking that through to creating commercial product. And it was being able to kind of go into those spaces and work on a slightly different scale to what we've worked in previously, in a city that's like heritage and focused on green and it's focused on diversity is so important. That technology has just enabled that. And so yeah, I think as a region we've kind of become very attractive to many people for those reasons, where we've actually combined a rich heritage, a real focus on kind of the sustainability and slowly starting to diversify kind of how innovation is done. We've combined that with through technology, and that's kind of, I think why it's important.
Okay, and Aby, I wonder if you've got similar or slightly different take to Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of the thing, anything about the economy are the people, and how can you make that thrive is essentially bringing an influx of different people, so that are not necessarily from Bristol, but the kind of cultural, influx of different communities coming in, working with different demographics. That's what's so important for the economy, to kind of keep that thriving. So as an example, what we are doing with our second incubator is it's an old warehouse that's being retrofitted into a lab space. And as part of that, it's kind of regenerating the economy. We are creating jobs as part of it. It's within the Temple Quarter Enterprise Zone. And there's all of this coming in, and that's a kind of, and this is enabling us to produce much bigger, much deeper opportunities longer term. So I think that's the kind of value in innovation, and why it's coming to Bristol is that it's so uniquely placed, it's so well connected, and it's so well integrated in certain aspects. So I think Bristol kind of has that all integrated well together. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, definitely integration, and how Rob was talking earlier as well about that kind of systems approach. Zahra, do you agree?
It's not that I don't agree. I think that I believe in many truths being true at the same time, and that also being a part of innovation is embracing complexity. I think that established systems of innovation sometimes prioritize productivity over and above inclusion. And I think that I very much have adopted a methodology of slow inclusion, which is akin to like slow fashion or slow food. It's really accepting that the journey and the process is very much a part of the innovation. For me, there's something about mundanity that we need to learn to embrace in innovation. Because relationships often, they are spiked around exciting moments, but fundamentally underwritten by average everyday interactions. Now, in the past, I would say that those interactions have not always been equitable. Oftentimes, the kinds of collaboration that Ben rightly refers to don't include an understanding of the challenge it is for people outside of the circumstantial sort of systematic ecosystems to actually become part of innovative processes, because they can be very fast, they can be using language and processes that are not familiar. And so what does it mean to actually teach in and support the involvement and engagement of new collaborators in pre-established innovation processes? Just that basic understanding, I think it's a very mundane, experience-led innovation, but I think that it's key to engaging people over the long term in relationships that can have a lot of trial and error attached to them. Very often, if something doesn't work out with a new collaborator the first time round, it's like, oh, well, that's that then. And I think that keeps us in a very limited place where we're often doing the same thing over and over again. I think it was Aby that mentioned, or it may have been Aimee that said, oftentimes these things are not linked up very well. And I actually think that in terms of social technology, the innovation now is to actually curate an accurate record that doesn't erase some of the learnings that are hard won and difficult to reflect and speak on, but actually help us to have accountability around experience, intention, and outcome. So often we want to focus on accountability around intention alone when it comes to creating good representation in innovation processes. Oh, we tried. But I think actually to fail is just as relevant, and actually it allows us to create a record that more appropriately allows for what we don't know, to try and rectify 400 years of exemption from future thinking that is a really sort of base place to begin. Just to kind of go slowly and know who it is that we're working with feels to me like a massive innovation that has not been the case thus far in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to stop you, but I'm going to just stop you there because you've said so many interesting things there. Firstly, you were saying about productivity, and it's actually interesting that you said that because when I Googled kind of innovation and economy in Bristol, and like the first kind of fact, if you like, that comes up is the city is leading the way in the country's digital tech ecosystem as it now has the highest turnover per worker, outranking Reading and London. So that's about kind of productivity rather than inclusion. But yet the inclusion is so important, and it's something that resonates, I think, probably with James, myself, and all the innovators in the city who are part of the Bristol Innovators Group, because they're all things that we've been trying to work on. We've been talking about failure, we've been talking about inclusion and how we'd like to play a role in that collaboration and bringing more people into that kind of conversation. So I'd love to kind of pick up that conversation with you potentially after the event. Aimee, same question to you, and do you kind of resonate with what Zahra's saying, or have kind of something that you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting that Zahra as well talks a lot about that failure process, because I think we all recognise the importance of that in innovation, but also innovation creates opportunity for us to change, opportunity for us to do things differently and in a new way. And so we should be looking to innovation to solve the challenges that we have around inclusivity, to solve things like the digital divide that exists. And when we talk about innovation, we're talking about making our ideas happen. And that's the beauty of Bristol, right? Because we've got this huge creative culture in Bristol, and creativity is the beginning of that innovation process. It's where all the ideas happen. It's where we decide on the things that could help us to solve the problems that we face. Innovation is where we actually then take action. We start to make it happen. And then, the startups, the entrepreneurs, they become that vehicle for development and implementation. And so ultimately innovation results in new business. And the introduction of that new business then starts to do things like what you're describing, Hannah. So increase and enhance your productivity. It creates high value jobs. It creates competitiveness, which means then we get more things coming to the market. And importantly, Zahra touched on it, it develops our learning. So there isn't one company trying to solve these big challenges. If you had one company trying to solve climate change, you get nowhere. It's about the work of many trying to tackle some of that larger picture. And some are going to be successful and some aren't, but learning is going to come from that. Learning is going to come from that failure. It's going to enhance our understanding so that the next wave of entrepreneurs have more chance of success. And so when you look at something like the pandemic and what we've just been through, that crisis, and I did a little bit of Googling as well, because it's like, what does crisis actually mean? And it actually means danger and opportunity, apparently. Although apparently a lot of stuff that we say is made up on the spot, so maybe don't quote me on it, but worth looking up. So danger and opportunity. And that's why we see such a response to things like crises. And during the pandemic, we saw the rise of many new companies all working towards that common challenge. And so the rate of advancement of health tech, such as health passports, that rocketed at an unprecedented rate. Vaccine development took months rather than decades. And, many have failed along the way, but some have succeeded. And ultimately, that's going to get us out of some of the restrictions that we faced for so long. It's pushed us on leaps and bounds. And now we're going to look to innovation to solve the economic challenges that we face as well, and some of the other challenges that Zahra has picked up on there around inclusivity. And I think that's why innovation is so critical, not just to Bristol's economy, but globally as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fascinating subject, and it's just fantastic to have people who are so passionate about innovation, but passionate about Bristol as well on the panel. So really, really insightful. I think we had a next question really around how innovation is key to the economic recovery and growth of the city region. And I think it would be really interesting to explore that within the context which you've all just mentioned around the kind of the cultural integration which is required to make innovation successful, and ensuring that we're not just focused on stats around productivity and GDP for the city, for example, which sees the richest people getting richer and leaving people behind. And I was also thinking about the kind of idea of like pivoting or directing some of our innovation towards those challenges that we see within a city context. So that question around kind of how do we ensure innovation is key to our economic recovery and growth in the future in the right way is the next question. So perhaps Ben, we could go on to you for that one.
Yeah, sure. So I was thinking about this because we've been through quite a lot of the schemes and the funding bodies that exist in the city, and we've been very lucky to work with them, and products have come out of them. But I think one of the things that I was thinking that's kind of maybe missing, but really is a key part of this kind of growth that we're talking about, is actually the young innovators. So many of these funding bodies have been on everyone's kind of 30 years old or older, and they actually, where are the 20, 25-year-olds that are coming out, and what, giving them the right opportunities, not just giving them some cash to use, but actually giving them kind of a business model which kind of they can see themselves creating a business from, or creating their own company and actually going and being able to commit a commercial product and revenue from it. And I feel like having those people at that young age from very different backgrounds, not just from higher education, but through kind of as wider reaching as we can, will not only inspire us as older people who actually kind of see that and be like, this is great. There are actually people coming through who are young, because they have so many amazing ideas, this youth, but I think actually to turn that idea into something that's not just like funded for a period, but actually is a business and can go and make money out of, and seeing that case study and accepting that you can take risks and you can fail is actually maybe one of the things that's, I feel like if we can get that right, that's a key thing to growing the economy on a very long-term basis in the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Ben. Zahra, I can see you got your hand up, so if you want to jump in, that'd be great.
Thank you. Yeah, just to kind of continue off what Ben is saying, I have like 40 mentees in and about Bristol.
Wow.
And I get paid really well in my work. And in terms of kind of this time, the pandemic time, I find that my practice is so much more hard. You both pay, but also listen to what I'm saying. I've experienced a lot in the past, people positioning my work as social politics, and finally people are able to accept my practice as a body of expertise around something specific. And getting paid well there means that I can afford to mentor a lot of young people in a lot of the things that Ben is mentioning. So many of them have never been able to say, this is my value as I see it, these are my skill sets, this is what I need in order to work at my best. And so what I've essentially done is develop an agency model, and we're prototyping that right now with support from the Bristol and Bath Creative R&D project. They have a trailblazing fund where we've gotten some money to try and understand what does it mean to bring independent practitioners into collaboration who do not have the institutional benefits that come from things like budgets and job descriptions and all the a priori inbuilt organizational knowledge that you don't get as independent collectives. And then when you don't succeed, it's seen as a reason to not give you further money or further funding or trust in those processes. So you no longer have the capacity to really institutionally affect the behavior of larger organizations. And yet organizations still bring you in collaboratively, but really it's to a brief, and that brief may be oppressive to the individual's like practice, but they don't have the power to actually make those demands, because fundamentally they're just lucky as they see it to have work, to be given a job. And so for me, the great thing about Bristol is that Bristol has a countercultural legacy that actually quite naturally can cede authority to small parties, to independent parties, but fundamentally they're encouraged to by the processes by which they can do that. So the project that I'm working on is really about building the self-esteem, this imposter syndrome that so many young professionals come into the workspace with, is really keeping them, I think, from making a difference. And I think the key thing that we as leaders at this moment need to try and understand is, how do we make a good ending? How do we put down power and transfer power? The fact that so many CEOs right now are under so much stress, are lacking the energy because they're so tired, having gone through this pandemic, and yet they're not thinking, who can I bring in and train up and devolve some of my power to, whilst also engaging with their energy and their ideas, but also teaching them what the institution does and what it means and its benefits. For me, that's the biggest shift that we could make, is really how to devolve power from the centres towards these people that Ben is mentioning, in a way that sees our understanding of complexity in the ecosystem evolve.
Yeah, thank you, Zahra. And both Zahra, you and Ben have sort of spoken really eloquently and articulately about the kind of cultural challenges we have within Bristol and within innovation, I suppose. And I know that both Aby and Aimee are really passionate about the same, overcoming the same challenges as well. But I guess interestingly, maybe represent these kind of business incubators which are looking at trying to scale up and grow businesses to support the local economy. So I don't know if that's ever attention at all, but perhaps Aby, you could talk to us a little bit about the same question about the role of innovation within economic growth and recovery within the city.
Yeah, thanks. So essentially, innovation is kind of a problem-solving challenge, right? So when you're being innovative, you're solving a problem that has just kind of put in front of you or has presented itself. And so many people think that to be an innovator, you have to have had a specific training, or you have to have a certain background. And I think that's where lies this misconception that anybody could essentially be an innovator. And I think this is something else that we need to teach the younger generation from day one. It can't happen suddenly at secondary school or at university or when you start the first day in your job. It has to be something that anybody can do it. It's about problem solving. It's about finding the most optimum solution. And as part of that, and so one of the things that Science Create does is we run an outreach community program where kids come in, and it's about showing them around the laboratories, showing them around the facilities, them having the experience firsthand to see what a scientist or an engineer looks like, to see the kind of work that's being done right here in the heart of Bristol, and then take inspiration from that and see that if you can see it, you can be it, sort of that attitude that is sometimes missing, because we see these things in glossy magazines or on TV commercials, but we cannot relate to them. And I think what we're bringing is a certain level of realism to it, but we definitely, absolutely need more of it, because there isn't enough of it, and there aren't enough role models. So if there's something we can do to ensure there's growth in this sector, we need to create more role models, and we need to believe in ourselves. So many people don't do that, so that's my 2 pence worth.
Yeah, thanks, Aby, and Aimee, if you'd like to pick up on that one.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what Aby's saying, and you'll both be aware we had that conversation with Greg Orme earlier this year, where we were talking about one of those blockers to innovation being that people don't often see themselves as creative. They don't think that they have the ability to come up with ideas and to then validate them and to kind of follow them through. But actually, we all have the ability to do that. We are all technically creative geniuses. We just have to relearn it, because we've unlearned it over our lifetime, the way that we've been educated, and in a very kind of regimented way and in a very siloed and boxed way. And I think, there's a real desire now, certainly in the city, but beyond, to change the way that people are educated through their childhood, so that we have more ability to do this divergent way of thinking, so that we're not so siloed in our approach when we think. And that will really enable us to be more creative and to open up more opportunity. And, we're really lucky in Bristol, because we've got 2 leading research universities. But both of them are looking to how to make, students more enterprising, give them more opportunity in innovation. So at the University of Bristol, you've got the Centre for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and we saw Dave Jarman talking on the video in the intro, and what they're doing is bringing students from multidisciplinary areas together and saying, actually, you can be a physicist, you can be an artist, you can be a mathematician, and you can come together and you can innovate and you create some truly diverse teams with diversity of thought, which is so important in that process. And I think, the thing that I've picked up on, certainly working with businesses, is that, we really need to look at how we develop talent and skills in the region. Tech Nation did their report earlier this year, and they said that tech roles have grown 36% in the last year. But companies wanting to work in that space, there's still a big shortage in those skills. So the talent pipeline, the demand for tech roles is outweighing the skills that are actually available to go into those roles. And that's critical. If we want to keep innovating, then we need people going into those jobs. And so I think for us to ensure that continued innovation that's needed for economic growth, we need to tackle that divide. That's why some of the programs that are going on regionally at the moment, so things like Workforce for the Future that's being run out of WECA and the European Social Fund, they're really important because they're going to enable SMEs to develop their future workforce. And both universities are part of that and delivering some of those programs such as digital health checks and digital skills training. And I think, that's where our focus is, and certainly one of the big things we've done this year at Future Space in recognising the need for talent and need for resource in businesses was to run a dedicated internship programme. So right now, today, we've got 15 interns working in businesses across our Future Space community, and that's been amazing just to see the breadth of skills there as well. We've got representation from all of the faculties across the university, from photography through to forensic science, and it's brilliant to see the students getting those opportunities, but also the businesses being able to be matched up with those skill sets as well. And it's really exciting because a couple of those students have been offered permanent positions as well. And I think it's little things like that we can do within our organisations to try and bridge that gap in the skills and the demand for skills.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. It's great, and you've sort of touched on the next question we were going to ask actually, and I'll let Zahra jump in a second as well. But next question was really around if you could talk a little bit about the work that you guys are doing to support innovation and the next generation of innovators, or the current generation of innovators within the city. And Amy already touched on some programs and some schemes which are out there, and we'd encourage anyone who's sort of on the conference today to have a look at some of those schemes and see if it applies to them. But Zahra, perhaps you'd like to pick up on that.
I just wanted to kind of add something to what Amy was saying, but really where Ben began, which is that when I worked for the Pervasive Media Studio, one of the things that I saw as the simplest and for me I could never understand why this connection was not made. For example, we know that computer gamers are very urban in their kind of demographic. Kids often playing all different kinds of computer games. We also know that most games developers are self-taught at the beginning, have a passion for games. It's one of those lateral thinking steps that I've never come to an understanding about why people don't understand that the players or the consumers need to be taught how to become creators through processes. We understand that in so many other types of processings, but not in technology very well. It's seen and kept a bit like art was in the past, something quite a protected knowledge base, when actually open sourcing of that kind of technology is understood amongst a certain level as completely the next wave. So for me, in terms of when we're thinking about developing talent, it's about lateral thinking. I've taken illustrators from small level on illustrators to actualizing those murals and actually creating entire projection mapping over the top and animating what they're making. Now, it's not always the talented creative that's going to have that imagination for their own practice. So when we're collaborating in innovative processes, I think trying to understand where somebody begins a journey and how they come to innovation is part of the production role. So I just really felt like I wanted to add that in, and then I'll leave it open for everyone else to pick the question up as you asked it.
Yeah, thank you, Zahra. It's so interesting, isn't it? I think, and we have this kind of pretty unique aspect of Bristol as well about the kind of the art scene that we have and the kind of thriving cultural creativity scene that we have as well in the creative industries, and utilising some of those to our benefit really, and sort of, you know, as we were saying earlier about kind of targeting maybe towards some of the city challenges we have and social integration and things like that as well. But yeah, Ben, perhaps you could pick up. So we were sort of talking a little bit about perhaps the work that you've been involved in to support innovation and innovators in the city.
Yeah, sure. I thought I'd maybe kind of touch a little bit about Everything's Music, which is kind of we launched it this year, and it was a good old slog project that took about 18 months. And it was a digital museum project that we built for that's web browser based, and we kind of saw this gap in the market where Bristol's music history has been told a lot in lots of different ways through films, exhibitions, books, and we wanted to create something that was kind of more permanent in the digital world, and also allowed us to really present musicians that hadn't been represented before, and also contemporary musicians, and continue presenting their work rather than it just be kind of go and see Massive Attack and kind of talk about them. It was really about trying to, you know, give a wide breadth, and kind of that platform, I suppose, was really our first true piece of innovation that we've done. And I think what we've done, like kind of to support innovation in the city by that, is we've given a platform where we can now add more to it, and we're constantly speaking to people in the city about how they can add innovation they've done into that. So we're looking at kind of different ways we can use audio and spatialize it, how we can use localized XR technology routes to integrate that into the platform and to give it kind of not just a platform for music, but a platform for innovation and technology in the city. And then how we can go and take it to other cities using those technologies that have been founded in Bristol and bring money into those people by going to other regions. So yes, we're kind of very much on our first kind of, you know, plan for this, and I'm definitely not the most expert in kind of it, but I think we've, you know, created a good framework that hopefully is inclusive for people to use and to be part of and to collaborate with.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. That sounds like a really exciting project. And Aby, perhaps it'd be great to get your thoughts as well.
Yeah, so people have kind of touched on this already, but you know, the work that I'm kind of involved in and is also kind of, we run similar internships and placement programs. So a lot of it is essentially kind of this peer-to-peer learning or co-mentoring mechanisms that, you know, that a lot of people have kind of done this, and there's potentially been a failure, and then now you're on your second startup and so on. So this culture that once you've failed, that isn't the be all and end all. And what we're essentially trying to do is create a community, and especially this is what I'm really passionate about in my work, is provide this co-mentoring and peer-to-peer learning kind of model where your failure isn't, you know, something that we don't talk about. Failure is something that we use an opportunity to learn from within the community, and ensure that not everyone has to reinvent the wheel. And it's about, you know, again, like teaching a man to fish, rather than if you go through that process, rather than just give them a fish, wouldn't that be much more beneficial for the community as a whole? So a lot of my work is around you know, enabling this kind of learning between our community and within the incubator. So we have about, you know, 30 plus companies, and the number is just growing. And the idea is that anyone new coming into that ecosystem from day one has somebody that they can look up to or that they can be buddied up with. And similarly, those who have exited can kind of come back and feed back into the community in some way, shape or form. So a lot of my work, I see that as the pipeline of how I support the community here.
Yeah, thank you, Aby. Yeah, it's fascinating. And Aimee, if you wanted to add anything to that before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, I think listening to everyone here today, I think the nice thing is I've heard the word community and collaboration a lot. And, I think in innovation, whether it's social innovation or it's arts, it's music, it's tech, it's science, whatever it is, the key to it is this community and collaboration. We enable innovation by bringing people together and helping them to navigate what they're working on. And so a big part of what we all do at a practical level is providing the environment and the space for them to do that well, to whether that's testing and building products, providing lab space for them with facilities, or, creating opportunities for them. It's really our role in it is kind of creating that community and creating that support. And the famous saying, you don't know what you don't know. So I guess for all of us, what we're trying to do, it's as much about raising awareness of the support out there and helping businesses to navigate it, as it is about creating new and relevant and useful content and support. So, hopefully then there are fewer don't knows out there for businesses and for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Sorry, Zahra, I think you wanted to add something.
Yeah, in terms of what I've been doing, I think my practice is in a slightly different place. I spent many years building that community and supporting collaborations. And I think the approach I've taken since the pandemic and sort of forming my own practice has been to edify myself, because I found myself massively burnt out and massively stretched doing things that organizations hadn't quite yet learned to do inside the bones of their own businesses as yet. And for me, setting the example to other practitioners of difference, that it's important that they value their contribution and that they understand their place of expertise, has been a journey I've had to go on for myself first and foremost. The second layer of that is, I believe, developing other inclusion producers for the city, helping institutions, organizations understand that the work of inclusion as a means of social innovation is a place of attention and specific practice. So training people and developing people in a certain way of a methodology has been really key. So now I trained about 15 inclusion producers for the West Country region. And then the last thing for me is really assisting to develop the kinds of programs and projects that creatives of difference enjoy working on, because I also say a lot, Aimee, we don't know what we don't know. We can't know what we don't know. But I also think that we are making a lot of our learnings at the expense of the experience of people who are becoming disenfranchised from opportunities, because it's harming them to be the product of that learning, essentially. So for me, a lot of it is about sharing openly what I do know, but actually formulating really direct questions to assess the readiness of both practitioners and organizations before putting collaborations and matches and programs together. So for me, there are the question of how well are you willing to be known, and who knows you in this sector, and how much of ourselves are we bringing to these like processes becomes really, really critical in traversing responsibly through innovation these days, because so many people want to innovate through representation and diversity, but fundamentally they don't always represent the groups, and even I do not represent often the groups that I'm looking to support. But I have trained myself to ask really good questions, so I'm trying to share processes by which we form questions that do the least harm possible to the people we want to work with.
Brilliant, thanks, Zahra. The next kind of question is, we've touched on some of the kind of challenges, but we've also talked about a lot of the positive stuff that's going on. The next question is around what the city could be doing to support you on this mission. And first, I just wanted to pick up on some of what you guys have said, because it's just really interesting that, Aimee, you said something about it is about raising awareness, but you also mentioned about the kind of the university projects that they do at the Bristol University. And I think a lot of small businesses in Bristol wouldn't know that actually every year the innovation students support small businesses and come up with ideas, and they've actually done that with Bristol24. And we worked with them when we launched our membership, and they came up with a whole load of ideas around Better Bristol as well. So, you know, businesses might not know about that. And then also you talked about the internships at Future Space, and, you know, Zahra, you've talked about people you mentor, and do they know that those internships are available, and could they potentially be applying? And another thing that, you know, Aby, you just kind of said, what can we do? Like, what can we actually do about it? And I wonder, like, what can the city do to support you guys in what you're doing? Where are the gaps? Where do you feel like you should be getting that support? And Ben, you said, you know, I'm not an expert, and that is exactly the kind of, you know, the thing that is, we were talking about having that imposter syndrome and people feeling like they need to be an expert in innovation to do it. But you've just kind of shown that you're not an expert, but you are doing it. So there was loads of interesting stuff in what you were saying, but I just, maybe Aby, I'll pick up with you first, because you were saying, what can we do? Do you feel like there is more that the city can be doing to support you in your role?
Yeah, you know, Bristol is in some ways not a very big city, yet it feels somehow quite divided under, you know, for certain aspects. And I think much more joined up thoughts, if we could kind of, you know, work closer, work better at delivering the same mission. Ultimately, it's about, you know, kind of this idea of like losing some of our smartest, brilliant people going to the West Coast or the Silicon Valley. But instead, if you created the right environment and nurtured them, then they might stay here. And the prospect of that means there's job creation, job retention, it's good for the economy, housing market, and so on and so forth. So all that would require is for us to have a much more joined up narrative in understanding what we have, what we don't have, what we need to do in order to ensure we can deliver those things. And I think that that's the biggest thing. So if we all, rather than kind of thought this is only for a particular area, or it's only for art and creative sector, but instead we thought collectively, if we change that narrative, what could it do for the entire society? I think that's what needs to happen in a very simplistic way.
No, that's really like interesting kind of take on it. And Aimee, obviously you do a very similar role, so I'd love to come to you next and just see if you kind of have similar or different kind of thoughts to Aby.
I think you know, we probably all feel quite similarly on this. You know, there's always room for more, you know, more support, more funding, more space, more collaboration. And I think it's interesting because from an innovation perspective, from a technology perspective as well, you know, Bristol has this real kind of vast ecosystem, you know, this fantastically connected support system where, you know, everyone knows everyone somehow. And, you know, that's really good, because you're starting to do that approach whereby actually, you know, whether you are at Future Space or you're at Unit DX or you're at Engine Shed, you know, there is a connection and we all talk to each other. And I think, you know, Aby and I were talking this morning about the importance of collaboration, about being advocates for each other. And if we go back to what we said at the beginning about all being united on that common goal to enable entrepreneurs and startups and businesses the best chance of success, then collaboration can only make that system stronger. And, you know, the stronger that system is, the more that we talk, communicate with each other, the more that we share in each other's successes, the quicker we're going to solve those challenges that we face, you know, through all of those different sectors and through all of those different challenges, from social innovation to diversity and inclusion, through to digital skills divide. It requires us all to work together rather than siloed from each other.
Thanks, Aimee. I'm going to jump in and just move to a slightly different question, because Zahra and Aimee, you were both saying about we don't know what we don't know. And we've had a question come in from the audience, Iwona, and they say, is horizon scanning one way to address the question of what we don't know, Zahra, did you want to?
I'd love to pick this one up, because actually I'm not a provocateur by nature, but quite frankly, I don't agree with just some of the last things that have been said about the practicalities of what we can do next. And for me, it very much wraps up in this notion of what we don't know. For me, actually, I think we need to ask better, more direct questions that enable us to understand the personal philosophies and professional philosophies of the people around us, people's driving motivations, because innovation takes motivation to deliver, but it also requires us to establish and understand something new. So for me, when I think it was Aimee said, we all know each other in some ways, like actually my experience is a lot of people are exempt from that system of knowing. And so actually it's how the conversation can newly include people who don't even speak the language of technology, creativity, innovation. How do we engage those people in an equitable conversation, become something new and innovative just in its most base form? So for me, there's something about entrepreneurialism. How do we help people to become strategic and imaginative within whatever it is that is their own passion and their own kind of small world? Sometimes it isn't about connecting up, because the thing about otherness is that it can sometimes be oppressive. If it's not in flow with the best of how you see yourself, it can really oppress you. And so I think for us to have a better knowledge of one another is one thing we can all individually do, starting immediately as we finish this call together. You know, this notion of how we ask a good question to somebody that we've had no engagement with. For example, I was just walking past basketball courts near where I used to live in Old Market, and this boy said to me, "Hey man, look, like, what do you do? Can you help me?" And now he asked me what I did for a job and could I help him. And now he's one of my mentees. He's a Somali boy, you know, born in Somalia, brought to Bristol, has been here a while, and has no connections to any institutions or systems that we know of. But his great plan is to build the first large university, you know, in the capital of Somalia. What an amazing idea, because for him, he understood that as the center for all further imagination, for all further innovation. And I think young people like that, we need to find a way to connect, not just young people, but all people. I always say we're only 5 questions away from finding out the value somebody presents in your life, but they have to be good questions. So I actually think we need to design better questions, and we need to build more everyday relationships with people, because once the better, I don't think that any of the work that we're doing is servicing the people who are on the fringes of innovation at the moment. And so are we really even innovating, or are we treating difference a bit like a Trojan horse rather than source code? Yeah. You know, I think the question we need to really ask ourselves, not just how do we align ourselves for agreeing new programs and new practices, but how do we engage with difference to allow for us to really do some dilemma thinking to get through some of these sticky conversations?
Yeah, so sorry, this is fascinating stuff, and quite a lot of comments are actually coming in about stuff you said, and also Dave Jarman said earlier about disenfranchised communities and how can they get more involved. I think this is maybe something we should definitely pick up at Bristol 24/7 after this event, and maybe do kind of an article or something about that, and follow up, because I think there's a lot of people who've got kind of questions about that and want to know more. I just wanted to come to Ben quickly, because somebody's asked, a guy also called Ben, who said, since COVID, many businesses seem to have suddenly had the time and or been forced to innovate. And obviously COVID's affected the music industry quite heavily. As we hopefully go back to normal, how do businesses find the time to try, fail and innovate? So how have you guys at Crack actually kind of pivoted and gone, okay, what we usually do isn't kind of happening right now, so how are we going to find the time and focus to try, fail and innovate?
So it's an interesting conversation, because we are now kind of starting what we had to stop, like our print magazine, and working with events and festivals. And I think that we've been very lucky in a position where we're now at a place where we've got these additional businesses we created through this pivoting, and we've actually set those businesses up as proper functional, isolated things by themselves. And so that we have done that in a way that Crack can still exist like it is, but Everything Is Music is now set up as a CIC, has a team that work within it, and that means that that can run off and do its own thing and live its own life away from Crack, but still bring in employment to the kind of the bigger team. And we were lucky, I suppose, that was down to the fact that we had some business support, and we kind of understood that through our funding that we got through that, which was Bristol and Bath Creative R&D, we kind of looked at creating a business model for it, and then the business model meant that it was separated from Crack. They were under one umbrella, but actually ultimately they kind of didn't kind of intertwine too much. And what that meant was that we were in a position to, once the world opened up, Crack and its team were still there. We just kind of worked with some additional staff to bring in, and I suppose we're in a lucky position now. We can do all of it. We can do far more than we did before, and that's an incredible privileged position to be in, where we've got these things we've done through COVID, and we've pivoted these businesses, but we're still lucky to hold on to our original core business, and that's like incredibly lucky. And there are lots of people in the music industry who haven't been that lucky, and have been really affected by it. And I feel for them.
Thanks, Ben, because I think a lot of people are kind of really interested in that project to know more. So thank you for kind of telling us a bit more about that. James, do you want to?
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about some of the challenges in Bristol, and clearly there's a lot more to be talked about, and some activities which we can pick up on. And it's great to have these conversations today to really kind of spark some practical action which we can all take. I'm just thinking about the role of Bristol Innovators Group in this as well, and how we can pick up some conversations with Zahra, for example. I can imagine us doing some citywide kind of support for the work that you're doing. And one of the questions we had was really about what makes Bristol so attractive. And we see the headlines around Bristol being one of the best places in the UK to live, and that we do have a lot of opportunity for people to come and get involved in innovation in Bristol, as well as clearly there being sort of systemic challenges around inclusion. But kind of just to pick up on some of the kind of positive points, I suppose, and the opportunities of working in Bristol. So what makes us such an attractive city and such a great place to do innovation? And perhaps Amy, you could pick up for us on that one.
Yeah, and I think there's been some really great conversation here today, and Zahra, really pick up on your points, and I think definitely we should be talking more and kind of connecting more to understand what the innovation ecosystem as I see it is quite different, obviously. And I think there's great opportunity in Bristol because we are such a diverse and bustling city that just kind of oozes creativity and innovation, at every corner. And I think that gives us great opportunity through things like our students and attracting talent through different routes as well. I think it's not all about university. There's other things that we need to do in the city to support communities. I'm actually a first generation student myself. And it's a really kind of difficult thing to do when you kind of come from a background of nobody having been to university and not really having those role models and those influences in your life, and kind of thinking that you're a failure from the outset when you don't necessarily have those kind of qualifications early on. And so I agree with Zahra that mentorship is really important as well. We shouldn't forget, if we've been through those journeys, to then work with students and with kind of mentees as well, to impart some of that knowledge and that learning so that we can go through that cycle much better. I think, at a real practical level, the city has some great things about it that clearly attract people in. We're kind of lovingly referred to as Silicon Gorge, for those that haven't heard it before, so, a hub of innovation, and, apparently we're the 4th most popular city for startups outside of London. So we're clearly doing something right, and that could be the fact that we have all of these facilities on offer across the city. It could be the transport links, it could be the fact that we have this connected support system, and I think all of it makes a great city, and I think the universities are playing a big role in that as well, making sure that we have this kind of young and diverse population in the city that is constantly challenging the way things are done. So, as we get older in the population, and start to kind of move up those generations, we constantly have this influx of young innovators and young kind of change makers coming into our city. And I think that keeps us relevant, and it keeps us proactive in our approach as well.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Aby, would you like to pick up on some of those points, and what makes Bristol such an attractive place for new businesses and innovation to thrive?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Bristol is, demographically so well placed and well connected. You have kind of so much green space right in the city centre. Wales is like a stone's throw away. You can drive down and have a weekend of adventure, which is why I moved to Bristol. So that's my bias. But that said, there is a huge key driver. Not everybody wants to be in big cities like London, and nothing against London, but that is a very different lifestyle to what Bristol has to offer. And we have to think about it. The best way to explain it is that buffer area. Bristol gives you the opportunity. So it's the computer, your memory processor. You have to have that free space in order for that creativity, in order for that innovation to happen. So, and Bristol provides that opportunity as a city, as a community, with all the social and cultural interaction it provides. It's a great mix of all of these things. And how vibrant it is. The young community here, I'm always constantly inspired and in admiration of what some of the people here are capable of. Working with the postgraduate research community, which is a niche area. However, some of the research that comes out of these students, I was on the panel for 3-minute thesis, and these students have to explain their 70,000 word thesis in under 3 minutes, and articulate it. And some of that fantastic innovation that goes into articulating and communicating that work blows my mind. And that's the thing, that people are attracted here because there's something special about Bristol, and people are attracted to it. All we've got to do is bottle it up now. But yeah, that's it. I think the innovation attracts others. So it's a it feeds itself in a way, and we need to make sure that we nurture that and we support that.
Yeah, something in the water, flowing under the...
I mean, I think like the Everything is Music project, the fact that that's so successful in Bristol, it just kind of shows, personally to me, kind of what Bristol's about. I don't, it would be successful in other cities, but I think it's, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it's the kind of project that everyone kind of gets behind and supports with that kind of city. Ben, I don't know if you wanted to carry on from what I just said.
Yeah, I feel like probably Bristol is something in the water, but it's probably something in the music as well, in the sense that like doing this project, you realise the 1950s all the way through to kind of where we are now, music has been in the city, and what that actually has meant for innovation, that is kind of, I suppose, creative technology innovation, is there's this amazing audience of people who are really interested in having new experiences. A great example of that is there's a new venue that's opened up called Lost Horizon, which is run by the guys from Shangri-La out of Glastonbury, and they were a real success story out of the pandemic, where they host an area at Glastonbury. They started this series called Lost Horizon, which is all kind of online gigs, online experiences using VR and kind of green screens and stuff. And now they've got a location in Bristol. They've still got Shangri-La at Glastonbury when it returns. And I think that they knew that they could do that in Bristol because audiences want to experience new things. They want to take risks. They want to be challenged. And also, that you're not going to, there's a real diverse group of people in the city. And if you can make sure that everyone can have access to it and that it's not something that is immediately kind of puts people from different classes and groups out of, being able to access it, I think, you've got a really good testing ground, I suppose, is one of the best ways to describe it almost, that Bristol's really actually a great place to test new things and to try new things, because if it works in Bristol, I think you've got, a really good building blocks to take it elsewhere.
Yeah, and Zahra, would you like to sort of pick up on that? What makes Bristol unique and what's great about us?
On this one, I agree with everything that everybody's saying, actually. Especially the thing that Ben said, I think, about the establishment of 1950s kind of culture, but also when you think about St. Paul's Carnival and how long that has been going on here, I just think that Bristol, it is a great test space, but it's also a place where people have a high level of self-actualization within their own communities. And thus it gives a strong platform to leverage that independence. When you think about the queer community in Bristol and some of the amazing events that come from that sphere, as well as when you think about, obviously, the Black communities here, but Somali community is making huge inroads in terms of impacting, I think, the general culture of Bristol, but quite frankly, all the way through to Extinct Rebellion, and then some of those more spurious groups that get together on College Green. I don't exactly know what they care about, but quite frankly, the fact that people have that get up and go and gumption, I think people in Bristol are motivated, they are community driven, and they are kind, actually, and they have a real love for the reputation of the city to be something that is open. There's a reason why Bristol was the city around Black Lives Matters in the summer that really made its bones, internationally. I think Bristol has that kind of that potential. But the thing that I love the most about Bristol is that it is a place where you can have work-life balance. You can do incredible work and make incredible relationships that edify that work. And I think also there is such expertise here in such a huge variety of things. The one thing that I am interested in terms of universities, sort of policies and practices, is how they deal with non-academic research in this city. So for me, there is a gap for people who really understand their communities, their practices, the things they care about, but not being able to create self-archives because it's not considered to be important enough in lots of contexts. And I think the universities could open up those research budgets to include and support people who are doing excellent work within their fields, but maybe not going through a traditional academic process, because I just think what they're doing to support students is fantastic. And I knew about the cross-cutting courses that they were offering and absolutely love that. But when you've got things in the city like the VR Lab, who are supporting individuals, entrepreneurs, small businesses, and then also academic research, it becomes pretty obvious to me that labs are really, really great facility, and who can create and support those things. I think the universities have that cash money. And I'd love to see what comes in the next few years. Now, they've been earning their money pretty hard through the pandemic, for experiences that I think they may need to give some cash back around. So I'm here for it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's great. We've got a lot of love coming through for Colin the Bulldog as well. He's fallen asleep next to you, Zahra. But
you didn't even perk up for the money.
Treat.
I think unfortunately we're out of time, guys. But it's been so great to speak to you all today. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you all have too. And thank you so much from both of us for coming along and sharing all your thoughts. And like I said, we will pick up on some of the really important points that you've made, that people have kind of come in and asked more questions, and we'll definitely kind of find a way to continue those conversations. So thank you very much. And oh, he's woken up. And I hope you all have a great day. Bye.
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 Thanks, guys. So thank you to all the panellists. As I said, we're going to follow up on some of the questions that have come in, and also make sure that we share kind of all the organisations and the ways that you can get involved in all the projects that have been discussed today. So we'll have all that on the Bristol24 website when we post the event, which you can watch again as well. We wouldn't be able to do these events without the support of Bristol24 readers and members. So thank you to everyone who's kind of tuned in today and supported us, including our kind of business members. We have a public membership and a business membership, and our business and public members both support our work in the city around social impact, and some of that is around innovation as well. So we're just going to share a short video around Better Business now, but thank you to everyone who's tuned in, and that's it for now. Bye.